The forest was alive with the sounds of celebration. Moonlight danced through the tall, silvered trees, painting the forest floor in shifting patterns of light and shadow. The pack gathered in the clearing, drums beating in steady rhythm, howls echoing into the night. Flames from a great bonfire licked the air, and laughter mingled with the wild music of horns and flutes. But not all were part of the merriment. In a shadowed corner, far from the fire's warmth, the Omega crouched in a hidden den. His fur was damp from the evening mist, and his eyes were fixed on the small forms nestled beside him. 3 wolf pups slept in a tight huddle, their tiny breaths rising and falling like the rhythm of the forest itself. The Omega had been cast aside by the pack, rejected for being too gentle, too small, too different. While others reveled in the power and pride of the pack, he had been told he would never rise, never lead, never belong. Yet here, in the quiet of his hidden den, he was needed. The pups depended on him, and in caring for them, he found a purpose stronger than pride or recognition. He watched over them carefully, brushing a paw across their soft fur. "You are safe," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant sounds of celebration. "No one can hurt you while I am here." The moon rose higher, casting a pale silver glow over the clearing, and the sound of drums grew louder as the pack cheered the Alpha King. The Alpha was a figure of legend, tall and strong with golden eyes that glimmered even in the night. His presence demanded respect and fear in equal measure. Every step he took through the forest seemed to command the earth itself to respond. The Omega felt a familiar weight of fear settle over him. He had heard stories of the Alpha's wrath, of the way he judged and punished those who dared to defy the pack's order. And yet beneath that fear there was a spark of curiosity. Why would the Alpha come to this part of the forest, far from the celebration where no one would expect him to tread? As if answering his thoughts, a sound broke the quiet, soft but deliberate. Leaves rustled, the wind shifted, and then a shadow moved across the entrance of the den. The Omega stiffened, his fur bristling. He expected the Alpha, yet the reality of standing face to face with him made his heart pound. The Alpha King stopped at the edge of the den, his golden eyes fixed on the sleeping pups. For a long moment he said nothing, simply observing. The Omega could feel the weight of his gaze, as if the very air had thickened. Finally the Alpha spoke, his voice low and calm, but with an unmistakable edge of authority. "Are these mine?" The Omega's breath caught. He stared at the Alpha, unsure how to respond. His heart raced, torn between fear, defiance, and a strange, unfamiliar hope. I don't know," he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. "They are safe. That is all that matters." The Alpha's eyes softened ever so slightly, and he stepped closer. The light from the moon reflected in his fur, making him look almost otherworldly. The Omega wanted to turn away, to hide the pups, to deny everything, but he could not. There was a truth here that demanded to be seen. "Why did you hide them?" the Alpha asked, his tone a mix of curiosity and reproach. "They would have taken them from me," the Omega said simply. "They would have said I was unworthy. I cannot lose them. I would die trying to protect them." The Alpha King studied him, his gaze piercing. In that moment, the Omega felt as if the Alpha could see not only his body but the depths of his heart. Every fear, every act of care, every quiet sacrifice he had made. It was terrifying, and yet it felt strangely comforting. "You have courage," the Alpha said finally, his voice low, almost a whisper that mingled with the rustle of the forest. "It is not the strength of your body that matters, but the strength of your heart." The Omega did not know how to respond. He had been rejected for so long, told he was weak, that he did not belong, that he could never be more than a shadow. And yet here was the Alpha standing before him, acknowledging something he had never dared to hope was true. The pups stirred at the sound of voices. Tiny yips escaped their lips, and the Omega instinctively leaned closer to protect them. The Alpha smiled faintly, kneeling beside the Omega to observe them more closely. His golden eyes shone with something that resembled admiration. "You care for them," the Alpha said softly, "and in doing so you have proven more than many in this pack ever could." The Omega's heart thudded in his chest. No one had ever spoken to him like this before, not with honesty, not with respect. Not even the strongest members of the pack, those who basked in power and fear, had ever acknowledged the worth of someone like him. Why are you here?" the Omega asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you care?" The Alpha did not answer immediately. Instead he rose, towering over the den, his gaze sweeping across the forest as if he were listening for something only he could hear. The wind picked up, carrying the distant sounds of drums and laughter, a celebration still raging in the clearing beyond. "I am here because the pack is celebrating," he said at last, turning his eyes back to the Omega. "And yet, I am also here because there are things that must be seen, and truths that must not be hidden." The Omega felt a chill run down his spine. There was a weight to the Alpha's words, a sense of inevitability, as if fate itself had drawn him to this moment. He looked at the Alpha King and wondered what it would mean for him and his pups. Could someone so powerful truly care for someone so small, so rejected? The Alpha knelt again, his massive paws resting lightly on the edge of the den. "You have kept them safe," he said. "But now the pack must know, and you must decide whether you are ready for what that truth will bring." The Omega swallowed hard. He had lived in shadows for so long that the idea of stepping into the light filled him with fear. Yet there was also a spark of hope he had never felt before, a hope that maybe, just maybe, he and his pups could belong. Before he could speak, the Alpha reached out, gently touching the head of the largest pup. The tiny creature whimpered but did not retreat, sensing the Alpha's presence. The Omega watched, fascinated and wary, as the Alpha's expression softened into something almost tender. "You have more courage than you realize," the Alpha whispered, leaning closer. "And perhaps more than you know, you have allies in places you never expected." The Omega's ears twitched, his heart racing. He felt a strange warmth spread through him, a mixture of fear and something else, something he could not yet name. The Alpha's gaze lingered, intense and unreadable, as if searching for answers the Omega himself did not yet have. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. The celebration continued in the distance, but here, in this hidden den, time seemed to slow. For the first time, the Omega did not feel small or insignificant. He felt seen, acknowledged, and strangely safe. And then, as the wind shifted and the moonlight danced across the clearing, the Alpha King rose, his golden eyes locking onto the Omega's. There was a weight to his gaze that made the Omega's breath catch. "Prepare yourself," the Alpha said, his voice low and commanding. "The night is not yet over, and the pack will soon come to learn what you have hidden." The Omega's heart pounded. He looked down at his pups, then back at the Alpha, and felt a mixture of fear, hope, and an unfamiliar longing. The world he had known, one of shadows and rejection, was about to change forever. And in that moment, beneath the silver light of the full moon, the Omega realized that nothing would ever be the same. The forest had grown quiet after the distant drums of celebration faded. Only the rustle of leaves and the soft breathing of the wolf pups filled the hidden den. The Omega sat motionless, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the Alpha King. The Alpha's presence was commanding, yet calm, a tension that seemed to hold the night itself in balance. "You must come with me," the Alpha said finally. His voice was steady, leaving no room for argument. "The pack will want to see what you have hidden." The Omega's fur bristled. I cannot," he whispered. "They would take the pups. They would not understand." "They will understand," the Alpha replied, his golden eyes unwavering. "But only if you stand with courage. Only if you show them the truth yourself." The Omega shook his head, fear and doubt twisting in his chest. He had spent his life in the shadows, hiding from judgment and ridicule. He had learned that survival meant avoiding attention, that love and care were dangerous when the pack valued only strength. But now, with the Alpha standing before him, something shifted. "You will not be alone," the Alpha said softly. "I will be with you. I will ensure they do not harm your pups." The Omega hesitated. The Alpha's promise was powerful, yet the weight of stepping into the clearing, facing the eyes of the entire pack, was almost unbearable. His pups stirred, sensing his anxiety. Their tiny yips tugged at his heart, reminding him why he could not hide forever. Finally, with a deep breath, he nodded. "I will come," he said, voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. "But you must promise they will not hurt them." The Alpha inclined his head. "I promise." Together, they moved through the shadows, the Omega following closely behind the Alpha as they approached the clearing. The warmth of the bonfire and the sound of celebration grew louder with each step. Wolves of all sizes and ranks were gathered, dancing, howling, and drinking in the joy of the night. But as the Omega and Alpha emerged from the trees, a hush fell over the crowd. Whispers rippled through the pack. Eyes turned toward the Omega, then toward the Alpha. The Omega could feel the weight of their scrutiny, the judgment in their gaze. Many had never even acknowledged him before, now their attention was impossible to ignore. He tried to hold his head high, but the fear gnawed at him, a silent predator stalking his confidence. The Alpha stepped forward, his presence radiating authority. "These pups," he said, voice clear and commanding, "belong to one of our own. They are the offspring of the Omega." Shock and murmurs swept through the crowd. The Omega's heart raced as he felt dozens of eyes on him. He glanced down at his pups, who had been hidden in a small covered basket he carried. They blinked up at him with innocent trust, unaware of the storm they had entered. "You," one of the older wolves said, voice sharp with surprise. "How could you keep them hidden?" "I kept them safe," the Omega said simply. "That is all that mattered." The Alpha's eyes met the Omega's, giving him strength. "Courage is not measured by obedience or dominance," the Alpha said. "It is measured by the care you show, the protection you offer, and the truth you live. This Omega has shown more courage than many in this pack ever will." Some wolves shifted uncomfortably, unable to hide their doubt. Others, especially the younger ones, looked on with curiosity and admiration. The pups yipped softly, sensing the tension, and the Omega knelt to comfort them, brushing his paws over their soft fur. "You dare to defy tradition?" one of the Alpha's council members demanded, stepping forward. His tone was sharp, questioning the Alpha's judgment. The Alpha's golden eyes flared with authority. "I do not seek defiance. I seek truth," he replied. "These pups are part of our pack, and their survival is non-negotiable. All of you will respect this Omega and his family." The council member hesitated, then nodded stiffly. The authority in the Alpha's voice left no room for argument. The other wolves slowly settled, tension easing but curiosity lingering. The Omega could feel the shift in the air. He had expected ridicule, perhaps even anger, but instead, he sensed a new balance forming, one where courage and care mattered as much as strength. As the night wore on, the Omega remained by the fire with the Alpha close at hand. They watched the pack, who gradually resumed their celebration, though whispers of curiosity and admiration lingered. The Omega's heart was still heavy with fear, but for the first time he felt a spark of belonging. The Alpha knelt beside him, his presence a comforting weight. "You have done well," he said quietly, "but there are always challenges ahead. The pack will test you, the forest will test you, and even I will test you." The Omega looked up at him, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "Why do you care?" he asked softly. "Why do you stay with me?" The Alpha's gaze softened, his golden eyes holding a mix of strength and vulnerability. "Because you have something rare," he said. "Courage, compassion, and the kind of heart that can change a pack, even a world." The Omega felt warmth spread through his chest, a sensation he had not known in years. To be seen, to be acknowledged, to be valued, it was almost overwhelming. He looked at the Alpha, and in that gaze, he found something he had longed for in silence: protection, understanding, and a connection deeper than he had ever imagined. Hours passed, the fire dwindling to glowing embers, and the pack slowly retired to their dens. The Omega stayed close to the Alpha, feeling a bond that was unspoken but undeniable. He realized that the Alpha's presence was more than protection. It was guidance, a promise of something greater than mere survival. Suddenly, a distant howl pierced the night. It was not the call of the pack, but something older, darker and unfamiliar. The Alpha's ears pricked and his eyes narrowed, golden gaze scanning the trees. The Omega felt a shiver run down his spine. "What is it?" he asked, voice trembling. "The forest speaks," the Alpha replied, voice low and tense. "There are forces in the shadows that do not welcome change. The pups, and you, are part of a future that some will resist." The Omega's heart pounded. He had survived rejection, hiding and fear, but now it seemed the danger had grown beyond the pack, reaching into the very forest itself. He instinctively drew the pups closer, feeling their small, trusting bodies against his chest. The Alpha stood, a tall, protective figure, and looked at the Omega with intensity. "You are not alone," he said firmly. "Whatever comes, I will face it with you. But you must be ready to trust, and to fight if necessary." The Omega swallowed hard, fear mixing with a strange, growing courage. He looked at his pups, at the Alpha, and realized that for the first time he was part of something greater. He was no longer just a rejected Omega. He was a protector, a parent, and perhaps something even more. A sudden rustle in the underbrush made them both tense. The wind carried a whisper almost inaudible, a hint of danger lingering in the darkness. The Alpha moved closer, positioning himself between the Omega and the unknown threat. "Stay behind me," the Alpha commanded softly. "Whatever is out there will find me first." The Omega's fur bristled, but he obeyed, heart hammering. He watched as the Alpha's body tensed, senses extending into the night, ready to confront whatever force approached. For the first time, the Omega felt not just fear, but trust, complete and absolute. Minutes passed, but the tension did not ease. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Then, without warning, a shadow darted through the trees, moving with a speed and stealth that made the Omega's heart stop. The Alpha reacted instantly, leaping toward the movement, a low growl rolling from his throat. The Omega held the pups tightly, watching in a mix of fear and awe as the Alpha confronted the unknown threat. For the first time, he saw the Alpha not just as a king, but as a protector, a force capable of both immense power and deep care. And in that moment, as the Alpha's roar echoed through the forest, the Omega realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The pack, the forest, and even his own life were about to change in ways he could not yet imagine. The shadow lingered at the edge of the clearing, a presence that seemed older than the forest itself. Its eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, and the Omega felt a chill run down his spine. The pups whimpered softly, huddling closer to him. He could see the Alpha's muscles tense, his golden eyes sharp, unwavering, ready to protect. "Step forward," the Alpha commanded, his voice low and full of authority. "Reveal yourself." The shadow moved slowly, revealing the shape of a large spectral wolf with fur like mist and eyes like molten silver. It was unlike any creature the Omega had ever seen. The Alpha growled, warning the figure not to advance further. The forest seemed to hold its breath. "You have dared to change the balance," the spectral wolf said, voice echoing like wind through the trees. "The Omega survives where he should not. The Alpha shows favor where he should not. This pack's order is broken." The Omega's heart raced. He had lived all his life in the shadows, afraid, rejected, believing he had no place in the world. Now this being spoke as if his very existence was an affront to nature itself. He glanced at the Alpha, who stood firm, unwavering. "Order is not the same as justice," the Alpha said firmly. "The pack survives because the Omega protects what matters most. The pups live because care is stronger than fear." The spectral wolf's eyes narrowed. "We shall see," it said, fading into the trees with a swirl of mist, leaving an uneasy silence in its wake. The Alpha lowered his head, looking at the Omega. "It will not return tonight," he said softly. "But the forest remembers, and there are others who do not welcome change. You must be ready. Your courage will be tested." The Omega's chest heaved. Fear and relief battled within him. He looked down at his pups, feeling the weight of responsibility in a way he had never felt before. I don't know if I can face them," he admitted, voice trembling. "You can," the Alpha said, moving closer. "And you will. Not alone. You have strength in ways you do not yet understand." For the first time, the Omega felt something deeper than fear, a sense of trust. The Alpha's presence was steady, reassuring, not just protective, but also supportive. Slowly, he allowed himself to hope. Perhaps he and his pups could truly belong. Perhaps he could be more than a shadow. The next morning, the forest was still. Mist curled among the trees and sunlight filtered weakly through the dense canopy. The Omega emerged from the den with the pups, carrying them carefully. The Alpha followed closely, ever watchful. They moved toward the center of the pack's territory, where a small gathering of wolves awaited them. The pack watched in silence as the Omega approached, the pups safe in his arms. The younger wolves whispered among themselves, curiosity shining in their eyes. Even some older wolves, previously doubtful, seemed hesitant but intrigued. The Omega took a deep breath and met their gazes. "I have lived in shadows," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "I have cared for these pups in secret, because I could not trust anyone else to keep them safe. They are part of our pack and they will not be harmed." The Alpha stepped forward, his golden eyes scanning the pack. "Courage and care are worth more than strength alone," he said. "This Omega has proven that. Respect him, protect his family." Murmurs ran through the pack. Some nodded, some hesitated. But the power of the Alpha's command was undeniable. The Omega's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and pride. For the first time he felt seen, respected, and part of something greater. One of the younger wolves stepped forward, offering a tentative smile. "You did well," she said softly. "We underestimated you." The Omega smiled faintly, warmth spreading through his chest. "Thank you," he replied, glancing down at his pups. They yipped softly, as if sensing the acknowledgement of others. The Alpha placed a protective paw on the Omega's shoulder. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The pack is learning. The forest is testing. But together we will face whatever comes next." Days passed, and slowly the Omega's life began to change. The pups grew stronger, healthier, and happier under his care. The pack, though still cautious, began to accept him and his family. The Omega found himself walking among them without fear, his confidence growing with each passing day. Yet the memory of the shadow in the forest lingered. The Alpha remained vigilant, teaching the Omega how to read the signs of the forest, how to sense danger before it arrived. Slowly, the Omega began to understand that strength was not just physical. It was wisdom, courage, and care. One evening, as the sun set in fiery streaks across the sky, the Alpha and Omega sat together near a quiet stream. The pups played nearby, tumbling in the shallow water. The Omega watched them, heart full of love and hope. "You have changed the pack," the Alpha said, his voice soft but certain. "Not through fear, not through dominance, but through courage, care, and loyalty." The Omega glanced at him, eyes wide. I never expected this. I thought I would always be alone." "You are not alone," the Alpha said, moving closer. "Not now, not ever. You have your family, and you have me. And together, we can face anything." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and the Alpha's gaze lingered on the Omega. There was a quiet intensity in his eyes, a promise of protection and something deeper, unspoken but undeniable. The Omega felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of belonging he had never known. The pups ran toward them, yipping joyfully, and the Omega laughed, a sound of pure relief and happiness. The Alpha joined in, a low chuckle rumbling from his chest. In that moment, the forest seemed to embrace them, the shadows retreating, if only for a time. But as night fell and the forest grew quiet again, the Omega felt the familiar weight of vigilance. The shadow had spoken of broken balance, and though it had not returned, its warning lingered. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. There would be trials, threats, and challenges that tested courage and care in equal measure. The Alpha stood and looked toward the dark horizon, golden eyes scanning the trees. "The forest watches," he said. "It remembers. We must be ready for what comes next, but you have already proven you are stronger than you knew." The Omega nodded, feeling a quiet determination take root within him. He had faced rejection, fear, and doubt. He had protected his pups against all odds. And now, with the Alpha at his side, he felt capable of facing whatever dangers the forest or the pack might bring. The night deepened, stars glimmering through the canopy. The Alpha settled beside him, a protective presence that radiated both strength and trust. The Omega felt a deep connection, a bond forged through trials, courage, and care. For the first time, he did not feel small or rejected. He felt part of something greater, a family, a pack, a future. And as the forest whispered around them, the Omega realized that life could change in a single night, and yet, true courage and love could endure even the oldest shadows. The Alpha rested a paw gently on the Omega's shoulder. "Sleep now," he said softly. "We will face tomorrow together. Whatever comes, we face it as one." The Omega nodded, laying beside the Alpha, pups curled around him. The warmth of family, protection, and newfound trust filled his heart. The shadows of the past had not disappeared entirely, but they had been softened by courage, care, and the unwavering presence of the Alpha King. For the first time, he slept without fear, knowing that whatever the forest, whatever the pack, or whatever ancient forces awaited, they would face it together.